In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, this is your professor, Assistant Professor Ibrahim Talat Ibrahim, PhD holder in Translation Studies and College of Arts Council Secretary at Iraq University College of Arts. I'll be delivering a new online lecture for you all students. It's concerned with some important pieces of advice regarding consecutive interpreting. So our today's topic is about 6 pieces of advice taking notes in consecutive interpreting. As we know that many consecutive interpreting students face difficulty in memorizing and making a happy marriage between what's heard and what's written on papers. This is why we are trying our best all the time to make the ends meet and make them understand the topics of consecutive interpreting. And the most important thing in consecutive interpreting is taking notes, which is considered to be the backbone of consecutive interpreting strategies. So, our first and foremost point is you must know. You must know what? You must know what to write as notes. How do I write notes? Why write as notes? So every single consecutive interpreting student or consecutive interpreting, let's say researcher, or even consecutive interpreters, especially the beginners, need to learn these important questions. What to write as notes? How do I write it and why I write it? Why? Why should I write this word? Why I shouldn't write this word? So both words are important, but we have to differentiate now. We must differentiate between these words to be on the safe side. So what to write as notes? You must write every single important point raised in the body of the speech as notes. And these important things represented by numbers. Whatever number must be written. Whatever number mentioned by the speaker in the recorded video or live speech must be written by the consecutive interpreter during the listening process. During the listening process, the interpreter must count on this point. I have to write down every single number, whether it is a statistic or date of publication, date of foundation, wartime, crises, number concerning, let's say, marks, average, concerning financial matters for sure. All these things must be highlighted by the consecutive interpreter during taking note strategy, which is always carried out within the listening time. How do I write notes? So we have understood that taking notes must be concerned with the first point, which is concerned with numbers. Before dealing with the how do I write notes, we have to mention something important as well. Anything regarding places, names, important names. For example, if you are hearing certain words from the speaker mentioning, for example, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, you are not, let's say, forced to write the entire sentence. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. What should you write now? You have to write UNSC only, or UN Secretary, or you can abbreviate the word secretary into SECTR or anything else that can come across to your mind at that moment of writing. So you have to minimize the words, the sentences, the paragraphs into small digits, or let's say words or compounding words or even abbreviations. You have to make use of abbreviations in this regard. Anything related to, let's say, arrangements, anything. We are going to talk about all these topics within the presentation today, but we have to give you a summary. Anything regarding, let's say, enumerations, anything about rivers, oceans, anything about technology, description of many things. All these things can be taken as notes during the listening time of consecutive interpreting. How do I write it? As I said from the very beginning, we have to make use of abbreviations as possible as we can. Consecutive interpreters must have vivid imagination. In other words, they have to be able to invent a new tools of taking notes concerning these things. They have to be able to be generative. When I'm teaching students in simultaneous and consecutive interpreting lab at Al Iraq University, I come across some students who invent new symbols regarding many things. For example, when this topic is about marriage, they draw hearts. When there is something related to death or death toll, they draw a circle, and in the body of circle there is a line like that, a slash. I ask them why. They tell me that these important symbols are coming across our minds during listening, and we are not going to forget about it later. This is the point that we must stick to now. We must be inventors of symbols that can help us remember what we heard during the listening, so as to be able to connect the dots between what we heard and what we have written on paper, and then we'll be able to produce a well-knitted product in the TL. All these things must be taken into account. Why write as notes? This is the point that we must stick to as well. We have to write these notes so as to be able to remember the entire context that we are dealing with. So all these points can help you understand these topics. And now we reach the point number 2 of our today's presentation. It's about your notes must be arranged in accordance with the arrangements of events in the body of the speech. What does it mean? For example, I'm listening to Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani in United Nations General Assembly. And Mr. Sudani started speaking about, for example, Libyan crisis, the floods that hit Libya, and expresses profound condolence to Libyan people. And then he talked about Morocco and Moroccan kingdom and the crisis that happened in Morocco, represented by the earthquakes. So when I'm listening, I have to arrange these abbreviations and symbols regarding these two topics raised by the Prime Minister al-Sudani in United Nations General Assembly speech. What does it mean? I have to mention the first topic and abbreviate as much as I can, and then I start dealing with the second topic. For example, you are not able to be productive once you heard the first part of Mohammed Shia al-Sudani's speech. Then you remember some important references concerning his first part during listening the second part of his speech. This will cause confusion. I advise you not to do anything like that in the process of taking notes. Why? Because this will create some bewilderment during the process of translating these symbols in the consecutive interpreting parts. And this will result to some mistakes that might have negative consequences on your career. So you have to be punctual and you have to stick to the topics that you are listening to. When I'm listening to the first part, I have to be dedicated to the first part, abbreviated, make use of clipping, make use of symbols, achieve my goal. Then once the speaker started speaking about the second part, you have to be able to abbreviate the second part as well without mixing between them, so as to make the message clear to the TL readers and TL listeners at the same time, because they might listen to you at the same time they are watching Mr. Sudani's facial expressions. You have to be listen mind as well. Number 3, which is important as well, you must differentiate between what is known and what is new for you. So this is a very important, let's say, element of consecutive interpreting success. What does it mean? For example, when I'm hearing a speech made by UK Prime Minister and he speaks about Wales and certain areas of Wales, I myself might have no idea about what he's saying, but I know how to interpret his speech consecutively. This is why I have to be careful in taking all these notes on paper. In other words, when he mentioned the Wales and other districts under the umbrella of Wales or England, I have to take these words into account and write it almost completely so as to be able to remember it later during the interpreting part. And I have to mention that. But this is not the case when I'm interpreting for a speaker speaking about my country or a country that I'm familiar with. For example, when the Prime Minister of Iraq or even the King of Jordan speaks about Jordan, Al-Zarqa, Amman. Prime Minister Sudan speaks about, for example, Baghdad, Basra. At the same time, he speaks about Duhok and Diyala. And I'm assigned to carry on the process of interpreting. As for the Prime Minister of Sudani, when he mentioned some cities, and as I said from very beginning in the point number 1, enumeration must be taken into account during the listening and during the process of taking notes. Enumeration means when the speaker enumerates certain matters, certain topics, and he mentioned a number of cities or provinces in Iraq. For example, Mr. Mohammed Shia al-Sudani describes his country from Duhok to Basra, and he mentioned Duhok and Diyala. And I'm assigned as an interpreter to abbreviate these words during the listening part so as to, let's say, be inventor and make use of time wisely. In this regard, I have to be very clear with myself and make myself remember these notes carefully. How is that? When he mentions the hawk, I abbreviate the entire province's name into D, but there is an arrow, and this arrow up. But when he mentions the word Diyala province during his speech, I have to be inventor as well. I have to be clever enough and make use of D, which represents Diyala, and abbreviates Diyala province, but this time the arrow must go east. Why? Because the hawk is located in the north of Iraq, and Diyala province is located in the east of Iraq. And these symbols help me generate new information. When I listen to him, I generate these symbols. And when I come to the point of interpreting the speech, I have to connect between what I have heard and what I have taken as notes. For example, Diyala and Duhok provinces are so rich. Duhok province is well known for its tourism. It's defined as one of the greatest tourism destinations, while Diyala is well known for its, let's say, vegetables and fruits. When I interpret these, let's say, sentences mentioned by someone, I have taken these notes. وتمتاز محافظة دهوك العراقية الواقعة في الشمال أنها واحدة من أجمل المناطق السياحية في الدولة، بينما تمتاز محافظة ديالى الواقعة في شرق العراق بالحمضيات والفواكه والخضروات. You have to interpret these in this way. This is why I said you must differentiate between what is known and what is new for you. If it is new for me, when it comes to a point of Wales and England, I have to be careful and mention Wales without mentioning or writing W only, because I might make mistakes during the retrieval of information. But this is not the case with something new and something known for me at this time, because the Hawk and Diyala provinces are known for me. I'm an Iraq citizen. This is why I encourage all interpreters, without any sort of exception, to be encyclopedic. All interpreters must be able to be encyclopedic for the sake of producing well-knitted information at the end of the day. This is my point in this important regard. And I'd like to ask you all to be on the safe side. I ask you to be on the safe side. Why? Because working in the field of interpretation requires great efforts, and there will be mounting pressure on your brain. And all these tools given to you, and this lecture is about mitigating this mounting pressure that's happening now or during the listening part of the consecutive interpreting sessions. We reach the point number 4. You must correct what the SL speaker says in case you are well aware of the point mentioned. Sometimes the speaker makes mistakes and you are well aware of the information and you have already got a permission from the speaker. For example, you are interpreting for him consecutively and the speaker is a visitor coming to your university and you are assigned to interpret his speech into the TL, which is Arabic. This speaker spoke about your own country and spoke about your university and said that university was established in the year so and so. But the year was mistaken. He made a mistake when he mentioned the year of establishment. You as a faculty member or consecutive interpreter working for this university, you are well aware of the date of establishment of this university. So in this regard, you can correct what he said. For example, when the speaker describes Al-Iraqi University as one of the prestigious universities in Baghdad, and it was founded in the year 1987. تعد الجامعة العراقية واحدة من أفضل الجامعات العراقية في المحافظة بغداد، وإنها قد أسست في العام 1987. Mentioning 87 is wrong. This is why you have to count on the correct date of establishment, which is 1989. أسست في العام 1989. In this way, you corrected this mistake, and you are gonna be able to succeed up later. Point number 5, you must summarize the core meaning of the Quranic ayah and prophetic hadith to the TL listeners, or anything related to religion, or any story, or any proverb, or any description of anything. So you must summarize it, especially the Quranic ayah and prophetic hadith, because we are not able to be, let's say, professional translator who can convey the entire meanings of the glorious Quran ayah. In return, you have to present to the audience the core meaning of such ayah or Quranic ayah or prophetic hadith. And this is the point that we have to stick to because we don't have time for that. For example, when we read, for example, وَقُلْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي عِلْمًا صدق الله العلي العظيم. This ayah is about knowledge seeking. Although it's simple, it's about knowledge seeking. We have to be knowledge seekers. And this is a good example. So we have to be able to give the gist of these ayahs and hadith and even any story mentioned by the speaker so as to be on the safe side. The final point or the final advice given to you today in this presentation, you must take notes in the TL. Otherwise, you are assigned to carry out side translation and consecutive interpreting at the same time if notes are taken in the SL. And this is the most important golden rule of successful consecutive interpreters. We have to be able to take all the notes that we have described today and explained in the target language. For example, when I'm listening to an Arabic speech made by an Arab leader, I'm assigned to interpret his speech into English. This is why my notes must be in English and it should be abbreviated in English language. Why? Because I don't like to increase the mounting pressure on my brain. If I'm going to write it in Arabic, I'm going to cause a headache for myself, and I'm going to be assigned to carry out two types of interpreting at the same time. Outside translation, which is meaning I have to reads and translates at the same time, depending on my site. And consecutive interpreting, I transfer what I have heard into target language. And this will create a situation even worse. The best way to handle the situation is to speak in the way that you wish, in accordance with the direction first. If it is Arabic, you are assigned to interpret into English. Number two, you must take all these notes in the target language to mitigate the mounting pressure on your brain. And with this point, we reach the end of our today's presentation. Thank you so much for you all and wish you best of luck.